You're listening to Home Sweet Home with Russ, McClellan, and friends. And here's Russ.
Hey, welcome back to Home Sweet Home with Russ, McClellan, and friends. I got a couple of guys here, a couple of really good young men in our hometown of Lake Chelan Valley that grew up there. One's my son, Mason McClellan. We're going to talk to you, Mason, in the third segment a little bit more about what you've been doing lately. But I thought we'd talk about, we're talking today about kind of growing up in small town America and how things changed. So I got Connor Stevens. How you doing, Connor?
Good.
Good. I grew up with your mom. She was a little older than I was, but your aunt, who sadly passed away when she was 19, was just a couple years ahead of me, so we were pretty close friends in school. And you were raised, also you're fourth, fifth generation. Tell me what it was like. You said off air that you had grown up in Manson, lived in Manson until about sixth grade, and then you kind of transferred to Chelan. But generally speaking, about growing up in the Lake Chelan Valley, what does it feel like to you, or what did you like or what did you dislike about
it? Growing up in Chelan and Manson Valley, the summers were super, super enjoyable, and the winters kind of slowed down, but it was all the hometown locals during the winter, so we always found something to do, some hill to sled on, and a place to hang out in. But we kind of were overflooded with tourists in the summer, which is kind of how the town runs, so it's not that big of a deal. We got used to it, but growing up in the valley's been pretty fun. It's gorgeous. Everyone comes here for a reason, and people come back to it, such as me, and we don't like to leave.
Yeah, it's funny because we often, in real estate, obviously, we're kind of on the front edge of meeting new people, and quite often, over my 32-year career in real estate, which is kind of a weird thing to say, in the same town, is that I met a lot of clients that have become good friends of mine, but the migration from the west to the east is at an all-time high with technology, as Mason talked about it earlier. We're dealing with technology at a level now that essentially there's a percentage of people that used to have to live in Puget Sound that can now live anywhere, and a percentage of those people are choosing the Lake Chelan Valley, and they can work from home and make the same amount of money they used to have to live in Puget Sound to make. And when you think about 4.2 million people that live in Puget Sound, wonder why it's busy. Well, people like it. And so it's funny from your perspective, guys, what I hear is, people, moving over to our town, and quite often it's happened in every town that's ever grown. People move there, and then for whatever reason, a lot of them tend to try to get back to where they just left. And so it's kind of this funny dichotomy where I'm going there because I like it, but then I'm going to try to change it and get it back to where I just came from. And that's a fascinating So, I don't really know exactly why that is, because it doesn't seem to make sense. But when you were growing up in school and you did sports, that's pretty big time, because one of the nice things, I think, for me especially, growing up in a small town, being able to play all three sports or just do stuff that maybe otherwise, if you're in a huge school, you wouldn't be able to. Did you enjoy that growing up?
Yeah, being a three-sport athlete year-round is quite enjoyable. I do have friends who went to larger schools, and they did not have the opportunity. They were single-sport athletes, which they could focus on, but being able to play all of them and enjoying all of them, like my friends around me at the small school, it definitely was one of the better perks of living in a small town.
Yeah, and the camaraderie that you develop, whether it's football, baseball, track, basketball. And then you went on and you were also didn't you go to training into water?
I wakeboarded at Central Washington University.
That's actually a thing?
It was a sports club, but we went down to California a couple times.
Oh, that sounds like no fun.
It was no fun at all.
No bikinis, no. Nothing. No beer, probably. No. Yeah, it's funny. When I went to Central, I think I was the first person that ever, I convinced the Frontier Tavern owner to let me use my student loan as collateral for a tab so I could be cool when I walk my friends in there.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Super Mother Burger at the Tab right next door. I still think about that thing. Yeah,
They're pretty good.
yeah, they were good. I love Central. Yeah, and it's funny because you can excel at things, right? And one of the things I think that I think small town teaches people is that to go for it, right? And it's okay to not be perfect. There's an old saying, "Done is better than perfect." And what I see happening in a lot of people these days is that they're so afraid to fail that they just never quite get started. And their own mind, that story we tell ourselves over and over again, which about 98% of it's not true. We worry about the future, which very rarely comes true, and all the things that can go wrong. And I'm not sure. My dad used to say the same thing to me, and I say the same thing to Mason. And I don't know if as you just get older that you just start climbing uphill both ways, 3 feet of snow to school. I don't know if that just happens. But now your family was also just like ours was in apple farming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and still doing that to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard, right? Because we got out in the late '90s, and my dad started working more with real estate, but we were partners for 30 years, and I know your mom and dad are very. You guys have a close family, and
Yes.
when you think about that, you said something that was interesting to me. And Mason said the same thing. You want to come back. Mason was gone to the Marine Corps. You went to school. And where'd you graduated from Central?
Yes.
And what was your plan at the time?
My degree's in actuarial science, so I plan to utilize that a little bit in most likely the Seattle area, but with COVID and some change of events, currently not on that path as of now.
Yeah, and it seems to me that's pretty common these days. There's a lot of people that I think the average right now is people change careers 7 times.
Yeah.
It's just this mobile world versus you take my dad's era. You go to work at a factory or you go to work at wherever you work and you do it for 40 years and then they give you a watch.
Yeah.
It's like hey, thanks, appreciate it. My whole life, great. Timex keeps on ticking. And then Mason, you went away in the Marine Corps, and we'll get into that next 7 or 5 years, and then you wanted to come back. And it is interesting to me that so many times to have the courage to change, and what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So we often don't, we feel committed because we went to school to get something. I got a finance degree from Central. And last job I had, I think, was in 1986, right?
Yeah.
But whatever you did is going to help you, right? The experience Mason did, shooting a 50 cal out of the back of a V-22 Osprey is probably not something you're going to do every day, but you probably will learn something from that.
Definitely.
Right? And I think that's the exciting part about having courage is to just press forward, right? And no matter how hard things get or how hard you have to struggle, you're sitting here, so you obviously got through it, right? And that's the thing. So often people don't realize that when they're facing their fears, it's really just perception. It's a story that we're telling ourselves. So I'm excited to hear, 2 guys growing up in small town America, and what you think. What do you think? I'll just start there. What do you think the town's going to look like 5 years from now?
We're building 10 houses a week, it looks like. So I just think it's going to keep expanding. Can't really blame people for moving over here because, there's a reason my family did it a couple 100 years ago, and now everyone else wants to do it. So I think it's going to keep expanding. The sad part is the winters are going to be dead. I think they're 75%, if not more, all vacation homes, which is not the best for the town, but it keeps we're pretty much a summer town, so we live off the summers and survive through the winters.
Yeah, one of the things I'm noticing like I said, we're on the front edge of change because we see what people are investing in. And that ability to work from home is you're absolutely correct. For my last 20, 25 years, my market primarily was second home buyers, investors, just looking to make a return on their money, or retirees. But what COVID did is it kind of forced ownership, management of companies, because they could not work in the company. They had to adopt different protocols. And a lot of people figured out that, wow, my people can actually do their work more efficiently. You know, if you think about a person driving from Tacoma to Seattle in I-5 traffic every day, that takes about 2 hours in the morning.
Yeah.
And then you got to find parking, and then you got to drive 2 hours at night to just have some silly meeting with some old guys, you know, that should be out on a golf course, probably not, you know, running board meetings in Seattle, right? So they get frustrated. I've had a lot of under 40, millennial category, say this is just ridiculous. We had Zoom, we had FaceTime, we had Microsoft Team, we had all these things we could use, but the company wouldn't allow it. Well, now they're allowing it, and what that does and is doing is I'm seeing primary residence buyers move to Chelan for the first time. Now, the challenging part of that is that they're making more money. So just the quantum leap between a job in Central Washington versus working at Microsoft or Amazon or a number of other companies that have a world stage online, they just make more money. And when you make more money relative to the people that currently live here, it's like my dad used to say in a bar, don't be careful how tough you are, because there's always how tough you think you are, because there's always somebody tougher. In real estate, be careful what happens or what you think, because there's always somebody richer. And if you only have a finite amount of supply and an infinite amount of demand, sometimes you drive till you qualify. Right. Anyway, hey, we'll get right back. I think this is kind of fun. It's a little bit different for us to talk about two guys growing up in Chelan and Manson. And when we come back, we'll get a little bit more about where they're going next. Thanks for tuning in.
Keller Williams.